Chris Froome has been not quite winning the Vuelta a España since before he began actually winning the Tour de France. In fact, his 3 second places since 2011 make him the leading runner-up in race history. If he can finally improve his record though, history has one of 2 slightly more prestigious titles to offer him. Either the first man to do the Tour Vuelta double for 39 years, or possibly the first man ever. Hello, there are probably punchier ways to open our Vuelta coverage than with an ambiguous statistic, but we thought we'd mention it early so that you can judge for yourselves the magnitude of what Chris Froome is about to attempt. Only 2 riders in history have won the Vuelta and the Tour in the same season, those being Jacques Anquetil in 1963 and Bernard Hinault in 1978. However, both those wins were in the days when the race was held in spring, making it a Vuelta Tour double, strictly speaking, and in Anquetil's case, it was when the race was only 2 weeks long. Since the Vuelta moved to its post-Tour slot in the calendar in 1995, no one has managed it. Although, just to add another layer of caveat and qualification to the teetering pile, almost no one except Chris Froome has actually tried it. This year he's trying harder than ever, expressly aiming to peak later in the season than usual, and evidently focused enough on the second leg of his planned double to be talking about it before the sweat had dried on the first.
The Vuelta is a special race for me. I mean, it's still a bit early to be talking about it here on the Champs-Élysées, but that was my goal at the beginning of the season, to set out to try and win the Tour and the Vuelta this year. And I'd say I'm definitely on track for that, so I'm still going to keep that in my sights, and let's see how the next few weeks go.
Now, we'll hear from a pre-Vuelta rather than post-Tour Chris Froome in a couple of minutes after we've taken a look at what he's up against in terms of rivals and route. And for only the 3rd time in its history, the Vuelta is starting outside Spain. Not that far outside, though, the south of France. The city of Nimes is the setting for the opening team time trial, and the climbing starts on stage 3 in Andorra. The first uphill finish comes 2 days later as the race heads down Spain's Mediterranean coast, and there's another on stage 9 at Cumbre del Sol to shape the race going into the first rest day. Week 2 in Andalusia ups the number and severity of summit finishes, 3 in 6 days and 2 in a row on stages 14 and 15, culminating on the high point of the race, the 2,500-metre Alto Hoya de la Mora. Week 3 heads north for the individual time trial, 40 kilometres to offset the Vuelta's 50 climbs, the steepest of which are still to come. There are 3 more summit finishes, the last of them the day before Madrid on the vicious ramps of the Angliru. In the absence of Nairo Quintana, there's no defending champion this year, but there is a departing one. Alberto Contador will wear number 1 in his last Vuelta, which will also be his last professional race. Vincenzo Nibali's last Vuelta ended when he was kicked out for hanging onto a team car. He's another former winner and the one major contender who didn't ride the Tour, so he should be the freshest.
Cerco, non sarà facile perché, come ho detto, ci sono veramente tanti corridori e una grande competizione, vediamo.
Fabio Aru went on to win when his then teammate was disqualified in 2015. This is also his first time back since, and comes at the end of an injury-interrupted season which saw him lead the Tour de France before failing to finish 5th. 3rd in Paris this year, Romain Bardet has never ridden a 3-week stage race other than his home one, so 2 in succession is something completely new. His aggressive style should suit the terrain as long as his stamina holds up.
But I don't know really what to expect. If I'm at a good level, at my level, I can fight with the top rider for the win the mountain stage. But yeah, so I'm really happy to discover this race.
After rebroadcasting it at the Tour, Warren Barguil returns to the race where he first announced his talent with a pair of stage wins as a 21-year-old in 2013. He'll be hunting stages again and riding for team leader Wilco Kelderman before leaving to become a leader in his own right next season. Adam and Simon Yates were supposed to ride this year's Giro together before injury to Esteban Chavez forced Orica Scott into a rethink. The result is that all 3 of them are at the Vuelta, and depending on their varying degrees of fitness and freshness, they could make Orica the most dangerous team in the race.
Well, we have really 3 strong riders for the GC here. I think no one started like the leader here. We will see what happened during the race.
Last year we managed to get Esteban on the podium, which was, really, a great achievement, but also a great moment in my career. And yeah, we'll try and do something similar again.
Quick-Step are another interesting outfit with a host of young talents behind leader David de la Cruz. 7th here last year and riding his last Grand Tour against Chris Froome before joining him at Sky next season. And having turned the talk back round to Froome, here he is talking to Daniel Freeb.
3 times second at the Vuelta. Does it really sting?
I wouldn't say it stings, because I mean I'm proud of those second places. I had to work really hard for them, but at the same time they're not what I wanted out of the race. So I mean, sure, it definitely feels as if I'm here this year to try and set that right and to try and go one better, obviously.
And no one has won the Tour and the Vuelta since the Vuelta changed dates to this latter part of the season. Do you think that's just a statistical anomaly, or is it because it's at the very limit of what you can achieve as a pro bike rider?
I think, obviously, physically, it's a massive ask to go on from winning the Tour de France to try and back that up just on a month later. Mentally, the Tour de France being such a stress pot, if you like, of everything, it's just the biggest event for us. There's a bit of a decompression period afterwards where you have to just switch off and come back down again before building up for something like the Vuelta. So I mean, it's a really hard challenge. I've had less than a week at home over the last 27 days. The rest of the time has been up at altitude doing training camps. I've done a few post-tour criteriums in there as well. So it's been a busy period. That's for sure.
And this period at altitude, it seems symptomatic of a much more focused approach on your part to the Vuelta this year. You've got a real block around you, and it seems as though you're taking it more seriously than ever before.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say. I think we've got the best team, I believe, we've ever put in the Vuelta a España before. So, I mean, it's not easy at this point in the season to have 9 really solid guys, but I believe that's exactly what we've got here.
And just looking at your rivals, Chris, there are a number of very fine GC riders who have come into this race saying that they're not going to target the GC. People like Romain Bardet, perhaps Fabio Aru, Simon Yates. I mean, do you believe all of them?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I think it might be a way of detracting pressure and attention to themselves. I think guys like that will have to see after 4 or 5 days of racing. If they are racing for all the little time splits, we'll know that they're there to target the general classification.
And one guy who's made no bones about going for the general classification, on paper your biggest rival is Vincenzo Nibali. How seriously are you taking his challenge?
I think Vincenzo did the Giro this year. He didn't do the Tour de France, so he's had a long time to prepare for the Vuelta. We're going to have to see what form he's turned up in and what kind of a team he has around him to help him over the next 3 weeks.
And just finally, Chris, on your form, I mean, how would you compare it to the start of the Tour, the end of the Tour, and also the start of previous Vueltas?
I mean, it's always been the plan this season to have a lighter first part of the season, and I think that's worked really well in keeping me fresher at this point of the year. Time will tell. I mean, it's not an exact science, so it's the plan we've worked really hard for, between myself and Tim Kerrison, to arrive at this point in the best condition possible, and I'd like to think we've done that, but time will tell.
Now, for the 3rd time in 4 years, Stage 1 is a team time trial, 13.7 quite technical kilometres through the streets of Nîmes, but for the first time it'll produce a King of the Mountains leader. The Alto de Nîmes is all of 100 metres above sea level, which is about 50 metres higher than the rest of the course, so there'll be a time check at 7.3 to identify the first man on the fastest team to the top of it. Now, the minute's silence has become a sad routine at sporting events, and the 2017 Vuelta stopped before it started to commemorate the victims of this week's terrorist attacks in Barcelona and Cambrils. Colombia's Manzana Postobon were the first team down the ramp in front of the Maison Carrée, and Lotto Soudal the first team we saw through the amphitheatre on a course designed to make the most of Nîmes' spectacular architectural heritage. They were on their way to setting the best early time of 16:22. Behind them, UAE suffered a crash on one of the many tight corners, Darwin Atapuma following his teammate Federico Zerlo off course. As we pick it up, Lotto Soudal still lead with Bora Hansgrohe next to finish.
All dressed in black, the team of Bora Hansgrohe. They've set a good time at the checkpoint And now in the final few hundred metres, they're in with a chance here. Lotto Soudal still in the hot seat at the finish line. 16:22 the time to beat. Bora Hansgrohe, though, David, looking after Rafa Majka and making sure he doesn't lose any time today.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity for him after having that crash out, the same crash that took Geraint Thomas out to the Tour de France. He came back at Tour of Poland, he did a good ride, and this now is an opportunity for him. Without Peter Sagan here, he can take sole leadership and really embrace this and try and salvage something from his season.
Yeah, he's got form on the Vuelta, don't forget, to third place at the 2015 Vuelta. That edition won by Fabio Aru. There he is, with his mouth open. Rafa Majka firmly one of the 5 who will set their time, and 16:19 is 3 seconds faster than Lotto Soudal, who now, in the company of Thomas de Gent, smiling, have to depart the hot seat. Probably won't be too bothered by that. I don't think, ultimately, with the strength of the team still to come, either Bora Hansgrohe or Lotto Soudal, for that matter, will really be contesting the top 3 places. And here we go again then for Chris Froome, just making his last-minute adjustments to his equipment. 2011 he finished second, 2012 fourth, 2014 second, 2016 second. But he'll be full of belief, won't he, David, that this time he goes one better.
Yeah, I think so, and arguably he's based his season around doing a double. And let's see, he was so close last year and previously, but this is the year.
Movistar are in a funny place. They have no Nairo Quintana in the Vuelta this year, the defending champion not in the race, having raced the Giro and the Vuelta. And the man they would have probably be chalking up or lining up for leadership is not here either. Alejandro Valverde, of course, injured on the Tour de France, is still recovering from that injury. Team Lotto NL Jumbo, with Steven Kruijswijk there in the white helmet, nicely settled into the remaining 5 or 6 riders as they, well, 5 riders it is, the minimum requirement, as they ride towards the finishing line. There's some distance down on the time of quick step floors, but that's respectable. 10th place at the moment, and not too many losses there for Steven Kruijswijk. Back out with BMC though, and well, news breaking, of course, that Sammy Sanchez has tested positive with his A sample, at least for human growth hormone. And Loic Vliegen called up at the last minute. That would have disrupted them, and it's depressing news, isn't it, David?
Yeah, it is depressing news. He's a rider that's obviously has a long and prestigious career behind him, and very much behind him now, because there's no way he's coming back from this if the B sample comes out. And the technology they have for these tests, it's very hard for them not to be right. They're targeted and they're specific, and unfortunately for him, and there we have a crash from Movistar, and
it's Arcas. Yeah, Jorge Arcas. It's the same corner that quite a few riders have come to grief on. I think it's just on the exit, isn't it, from the Nîmes arena itself? But yeah,
I think it's for Samuel Sanchez. It's because he does bridge the generations from the era where there was so much trouble and issues, and he's bridged across this new generation, and you'd have thought that he was part of that new generation, and it would appear that there's a legacy, and he's part of it, and let's see, but it doesn't look good.
So BMC, slightly reconfigured team, but they are the strong favourites for this opening team time trial, and they are now just within 300 or so metres of the finish line, and they have got a real chance here of going one faster than Quick Step Floors. 16:04 the time to beat, and I think BMC are on a flyer here. As you'd expect, they've got Rowan Dennis in their midst, of course, the predominant time trialist at the moment, and there he is, Dennis, absolutely flying, looking over to see where the rest of his team are. I think it's going to be Rowan Dennis who crosses the line comfortably in first place there. The 5th place rider stops the clock at 15:58, the first team and the only team to go under 16 minutes. They've got a 6-second lead at this point over Quick Step. That'll probably be good enough.
Wow, I mean, seeing how strong Rohan Dennis was in that final straight, that's imperial form. I mean, to do that after a team time trial, when you're a specialist, normally you carry the weight of the team and you're the most exhausted at the finish, and yet he seemed to still be in control, and more than in control, in dominant form. So yeah, he's on fire.
Yeah, Rowan Dennis, by the way, David, has entered and won every single time trial or team time trial this year that he has entered. I mean, that's just a phenomenal record.
Well, he just showed that right there, just how much better than he was than all of his team. So I think he will be going this year for the time trial World Championships individually, and I think he's showing that that is his target now. If he's that dominant in this sort of race, then we can be sure that he's very clearly trained for that goal.
Well, hello. We didn't see Team Sky roll off the start ramp. They obviously were starting their race at exactly the same point that BMC finished theirs, so the camera is quite rightly focused on that brilliant effort from BMC. But if there's one team still out there on the road who can, on their day, challenge the time of BMC, you'd have to argue it might well be Team Sky.
Yeah, it might well be. There's only a handful of teams that compete at this level against each other, and as we said before, it's BMC, Quickstep, Orica Scott, and Team Sky is the fourth. Movistar as well, as we're seeing now. They are a team that we always think of them as a classic Spanish climbing team, but without fail, they're up there in the top end of the results when it comes to team time trials. And so we'll see them up there, but Team Sky, you're right. But at the same time, it's one of those things where they're here from GC.
Well, a man who needs no introduction gets an introduction, Alberto Contador. The last team off the start ramp, Trek Segafredo. And for the last time, Alberto Contador will be rolling off the start ramp of a Vuelta. Remember, this is a race that he has won 3 times, going right back to 2008, an astonishing record from a controversial rider who is admired and treated with scepticism in equal measure. But make no mistake, in Spain, when the race eventually gets there, he is still a national hero. So, Trek Segafredo off and running, and for Alberto Contador, just 3 more weeks of racing in an extraordinary career. $15 minutes and 58 seconds, the best time for BMC, and partly the reason for that is they've got the best time trialist, arguably, in the world in their midst. Rowan Dennis crossed the line first, and if BMC win the stage, he will lead the Vuelta going into stage 2. Étoile Mondiale with Domenico Pozzovivo, with Romain Bardet, and with Hugo Hull, the Canadian, pushing for the line. But they're losing time.
Now, interesting watching that cross the line. They're all looking at Bardet. Bardet was their worst, their weakest link, if you like. He watched them all just glance over their shoulder. The person they were glancing at was Romain Bardet. So, not the best start for him individually or them as a team.
Well, BMC have started excellently. The only team under 16 minutes now. Can Team Sky threaten their time? BMC, on paper, could be endangered by this very, very strong Vuelta team that they've brought to the party. The big, looming figure of Ian Stannard, missing out on the Tour de France, but he is here at the Vuelta.
Yeah, Team Sky, who have, I mean, you could arguably say that the reason that Chris Froome hasn't won is that one year they had a very bad team time trial. And Trek Segafredo, who we see here, is a very similar team to Team Sky in that respect. They have great GC pedigree, and yet team time trials they've never truly excelled at. Not like Quickstep or BMC or Orica Scott. It's never been considered one of their fortes, which is a little bit incongruous because you would expect these really big teams to excel in this event, and yet oddly Trek Segafredo and Team Sky, it is not necessarily their forte.
Trek Segafredo through the arena, and Orica Scott now not far from the finishing line. It's Sven Tuft, the Canadian, another Canadian rider, time trialist, who's on the front now. We're looking for the GC riders. There's Esteban Chavez tucked in there nicely. They look like they've got strength in numbers still there. Adam Yates, Simon Yates, both still there as they begin to dispense with 1 or 2 riders, but they still have, 6? And they've posted a good time. It's not going to be enough to win this time trial, but in terms of limiting their losses, which is partly what it's all about, this is a good ride.
Yeah, and the Yates brothers leading it across the line. It's there you have Esteban Chavez, the 5th man across the line. It is a more than a respectable ride. 4th on a team that is based around climbing. It is quite exceptional, which goes to show the pedigree of this team when it comes to this event.
Well, let's be honest, we are hedging our bets somewhat as to which Yates brother that was. But we can be sure of this. Both Simon Yates and Adam Yates were safely in that group of 5 there from Orica Scott.
Adam, you're out of the starting blocks. How does it feel to be finally on the road?
Yeah, it feels good. We've had a couple of days of training on these TT bikes, and I think we did a good ride. We've lost a couple of seconds to a couple of teams, but on a course like that, with the guys we've got here, I think we've done a good ride. Yeah, we've only got a couple of big guys, and the rest of us are climbers, so Yeah, lost a little bit of time, but we'll have to wait and see what everyone else does now, because there's still a few teams to come. But all in all, I think it was a good ride.
Well, Daniel Froome just catching up with Adam Yates shortly after he had finished, and Movistar and Team Sky and Trek Segafredo, the only 3 teams remaining. Movistar beginning to lose 1 or 2 riders, as that's Richard Carapaz, the Ecuadorian rider in this Spanish, essentially mostly Spanish team, begins to drop away.
And there's an opportunity through this dog leg, as you call it, these series of corners gives him an opportunity to get back on, because the train does get extended, the concertina effect, which will benefit him. But then if he is weakening, he will be troubled by the acceleration when they come out of it, because in that final phase of the race, it does become brutal, the accelerations.
Through the checkpoint at 7.3k, Team Sky 6 seconds slower than BMC at that point, so they're going to have to do a negative split over the length of this time trial, this 13.7 kilometre time trial in total, if they're going to depose BMC and take the race lead on day 1 here in Nîmes.
And we can see how technical this course is through this. We haven't had an opportunity to see much of this footage up to this point through that series of corners, and just what it's like, which makes it very difficult on a short time trial like this, where the speed is intense. Through the corners like that, it does extend the team. You can see here how little gaps open. You see a rider there just sprinting up, trying to close a gap, because in the final kilometre, you don't put any thought into it. If a gap opens in front of you, even if it's 2 or 3 riders in front, you jump in, you fill it, because the time is taken on the 5th rider across the line. So you have to make sure those first 5 riders are together.
That was Carlos Betancourt, actually, just yo-yoing somewhat off the back, a rider who is rediscovering his very best form, and they might be relying on him as the mountains loom. Movistar, the winners of the opening team time trial in 2014, and in the same time as Team Sky, who won the team time trial last year, but this is a very different Movistar team. It's a good time. I don't think it's going to be fast enough to beat BMC, but this is a bit better than many people might have anticipated from this slightly understrength Movistar team in their home Grand Tour. So a little bit slower than Movistar already. They're dropping down the rankings. Provisional 4th place, but it's decent from Movistar. Perhaps no more than that. They have no Nairo Quintana. Don't forget, they don't have Alejandro Valverde. So remains to be seen just who emerges as their big GC hope. Probably Marc Soler, but Soler already finds himself 24 seconds down on the likes of Rowan Dennis, Damiano Caruso and TJ Van Garderen from BMC, with Team Sky and Trek Segafredo still to come.
And as you said, now that is a good time. It's not stellar, but it's very respectable, and it keeps them in the hunt. Trek Segafredo, you see this is the tiny little climb on the course, which they're just pushing through. It's
over the top.
Yeah, that's where the team classification will be taken from. And again, that's not something we've seen very often in the footage of today's race. But somebody will be wearing the climber's jersey at the end of today, thanks to that little classification there. But again, you can see, and it's a very dynamic course, and it does put a lot of stress on. And you can see a team there, even Team Sky, coming up there on vehicles in front of them, which is definitely not ideal in this late stage of the race where the stress is high.
Oh, frustratingly, we've lost the clock there, but from that point, with 1 kilometre to go, most of the teams are getting through this final kilometre in around about 1:10, run 1:12. But we've lost timing, so we might only get a time from Team Sky at the finish line. Remember, BMC have posted a time of 15:58. That's their best time, as one of the Movistar riders is about to be caught and passed by the Team Sky train. And now we have a clock, 15:18. I don't think they're going to get there, are they? It's going to be close, but I think BMC with that time might just hold on, as Chris Froome himself gets on the front with Salvatore Puccia, and Ian Stannard, you can see, is still there. So all their big hitters still very much in play, but Chris Froome taking the responsibility and driving this on, and anxious as he looks over his shoulder that he doesn't put the 5th place rider into trouble.
Well, they can just see how strong Chris Froome is. I mean, Ian Stannard's just exploding. He's ripping the team speed. There's only 5 riders left. Now, Chris Froome is doing all the damage. Now, Ian Stannard knows that the time is now, the clock will stop on him. So they have to wait for him. Ian Stannard, now, the whole team is based on him. This much what we saw at AG2R and Romain Bardet, but it's Chris Froome who is showing exceptional form.
Well, BMC are going to hold on with just one more team after Team Sky to come. They stop the clock at 16:07, 9 seconds down on BMC. But significantly, Chris Froome, I think, will be looking to other teams and how they have fared. The likes of Fabio Aru, the likes of Vincenzo Nibali, the likes, of course, of Romain Bardet, and he's made gains on all of the others. he did look extremely strong, leading that effort home.
Yeah, and that's ominous to all the other the contenders for the GC to watch a team come across, and they're not far behind. They're within 9 seconds behind, and him leading them home so strongly. That's indicative of the condition he's in.
Well, one last hurrah for Alberto Contador. He's just battling to get on terms with his teammates who have left him at the moment. Just a little gap opening up. You can see Contador there grimacing, looking over his shoulder, in third place in the Trek Segafredo lineup. And they are going to stop the clock at least 30 seconds down on BMC. BMC win the opening team time trial, and Alberto Contador sustains losses of 35 seconds to the GC riders in the BMC colours. He loses 26 seconds by my calculations to Chris Froome. But what will he produce over the coming 3 weeks? Don't rule out Alberto Contador producing something spectacular. His race, his final Vuelta, has only just begun, and soon he will be heading into his home country, where he will unleash, I'm sure, his explosive efforts.
Right, here's the first stage result of the 2017 Vuelta. BMC by 6 seconds from Quick-Step and Sunweb, with Sky fourth, another 3 seconds back. Orica Scott with the closest of the other main contenders teams to Sky, losing 8 seconds to them, 17 to the winners. Vincenzo Nibali's Bahrain Merida came in 31 seconds down. Trek and Alberto Contador at 35 seconds, Fabio Aru's Astana at 41, and Romain Bardet's AG2R lost 46 seconds, finishing ahead of only 3 wildcard teams and UAE Team Emirates, who suffered an early crash. Now, even Madrid might struggle for a better podium setting than this. BMC taking to the stage in the amphitheatre to claim the time trial win, and all the jerseys, including the climber's polka dots, for Nicholas Roach.
Nico, you got Rowan in the red jersey. How hard did he make it for the rest of the team today?
Yeah, you know, Rowan is a time trial specialist, and the thing about being a time trial specialist is to know when to put the pressure on and also when not to put it. So I think Rowan really did a perfect job today, and keeping the pace up, accelerating when he needed to, but also not killing the whole team. And it was decided this morning that if we were to arrive, he was to cross the line first, and I think it was only fair.
And you're in the mountains jersey, or you will be tomorrow. Presumably that wasn't the target. I think it was the shortest, easiest mountain Grand Prix there's ever been in a major tour.
No, I wouldn't say that. I disagree. It was a pretty hard 300 meters to get to the top. I just didn't have anybody to sprint again, but believe me, I was in the herd box going on top of that drag. No, I didn't think about the mountains jersey of saying, oh, I'm going to sprint the fastest I can to get over the line. On top of that, the kicker. But no, it's always nice tomorrow to start with a different jersey. Yeah, at least the family recognises me on TV tomorrow.
Everyone will be able to recognise Nicholas Roach tomorrow, and he'll still be in the jersey when the race hits the real mountains on Monday. The red jersey is a little less easily picked out from the race helicopter, especially when his teammates are in red and black, but Rohan Dennis is the Vuelta's first leader, and as is always the case after team time trials, the winners dominate the top 10, 6 BMCs and 4 Quick-Steps. Behind them, the big names from Barguil through Froome to the Yates brothers Chavez and Maika will be happy with their day's work. Nibali, Zakharine, Contador and Bardet increasingly less so. And the race leader, not really bothered at all.
Look, I'm not too worried about the GC. Of course, if I do just seem to have really good legs in the mountains, I'm not going to just drop off the wheel and lose time on purpose. But the main goal for this year was the Giro, and then the Vuelta, try to aim for a few stages and really use it as preparation to get a good result in Worlds just after this. So, look, GC is pretty loose for me, and the first goal was to get some stages.